All right, let's come back to a domestic focus. We talked yesterday about changes afoot to allow the licensing of online casinos in New Zealand. I don't know about you. I can't remember in the run-up to the election a whole lot of people running around saying, gosh, we need online casinos in New Zealand. And we had a very, very interesting chat yesterday about gambling and the regulation of gambling in New Zealand. We have the Minister responsible, Brooke van Velden, and Deputy Leader of the ACT Party with us this morning. But before we go there, and welcome to you, Brooke, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Before we go there, I just want to deal with the lapel pin issue, which seems to have exploded in the House.
Yes. Yeah, so...
Are you a lapel pin wearer or not?
No, I don't wear lapel pins, but, I tend to change my jacket so frequently that I tend not to want to put too many holes in all of them.
Yeah.
So I don't worry about chopping and changing all of that, but I do wear a lot of pink blazers, so that's kind of my personal branding in the Parliament chamber.
Now, was it ACT's understanding that lapel pins were cool in the chamber?
Yeah, this has been a convention of the standing orders for a number of years. David Seymour, as well as a few of my colleagues, have been wearing party-branded lapel pins that have been approved by previous speakers in the chamber. We're still a little uncertain when Jerry made this specific ruling about lapel pins. But look, I think it points to a wider distraction here. That we've got a speaker at the moment that is not doing the job as intended, standing up for members of Parliament to actually do their jobs, focusing on things like lapel pins in the chamber rather than harassment in the corridors and racial harassment in select committees, which is stopping them doing their jobs that they were elected for.
Minister, that's a very... I just want to take pause here. What you have just said about Jerry Brownlee, the Speaker, is a pretty serious thing for a sitting parliamentarian to say about the Speaker outside the chamber.
Well, it's nothing that our leader David Seymour hasn't already been saying, and Karen Shaw has been expressing in the media herself. Karen...
Are you accusing him of incompetence or bias?
Look, Sean, can I just say here, firstly, I've come on to talk about gambling. But secondly, we do have members of Parliament who have quite outrightly said what has been happening in Parliament is not acceptable. If you look at the harassment that my colleague Karen Shaw has to deal with on the daily, it's not okay. We should be leaders in Parliament, showing an example to the rest of the country of what is acceptable. If we have people, name-calling, telling people that they can't do their jobs on the grounds of their race, then I don't think that is acceptable, and it should be called out. It's not acceptable. But at the moment, we're talking about lapel pins and whether or not they're acceptable in the chamber and being brought under the standing orders for putting something on your shirt, rather than actually focusing on the large issue, which is we've got members of Parliament that were brought to Parliament to do their jobs, but are facing harassment in the corridors and around Parliament, who should just feel comfortable and safe doing their job.
A number of people have texted in and say, lapel pins, what about wearing scarves or headgear associated with terrorist organisations? So it seems to me there are some interesting standards. Do you have, or is the ACT in the process of seeking any sort of meeting or process to clarify all this with the Speaker and move forward in a positive way?
Look, you'd have to speak to our party whip about that. Okay. Like I said, Sean, I'm here to talk about gambling.
Let's get into the gambling. What are the chances that we'd start talking about something else? Can I ask you first, where has been the massive public call for licensing online gambling casinos in New Zealand?
So this was part of the National Party's tax plan that was part of the coalition agreement between ACT and National. So as Minister of Internal Affairs, I've been tasked with implementing that part of the tax plan. And as part of it, what we've ended up with is a high-level agreement for a licensing regime that will allow for firstly, tax collection, but also harm minimisation standards and consumer protection. At the moment, we have a completely unregulated online casino market, bearing in mind that in the physical world, for actual casinos, it is regulated. We look after the vulnerable and make sure that people aren't being exploited in casinos. And we are attempting to put that same licensing regime online for the digital world. And
all right.
increasing,
so rather than being driven by a public desire for these services, if you like, the genesis of the policy idea is that bad faith players or people we can't regulate and can't get tax from are doing this anyway. Let's try and get this practice inside a tent that we can have some control over.
Yeah, what we're attempting to do is channel people into a regulated market where people can know that there are standards that these companies need to uphold. For one example, it might be a consumer protection, such as if you have winnings online, that the company actually allows you to take those out rather than forcing you to keep them within their own platform.
And we talked yesterday, a lot of people said, you win big, but you win in a currency you can only spend inside the casino environment, that it's kind of illusory. Why not just shut down the overseas operators and stop this market existing at all? Why not just geo-block online gambling in New Zealand?
Well, I think the difficulty here is we know that we live in a digital world, right? Things are going digital in every industry, and we are seeing an uptick in the number of people using online gambling in New Zealand. At the moment, though, it's a completely unregulated market. So
what I'm saying, why not just turn it off? In a digital world, you can do that.
Well, the digital world is not quite that simple, Sean. What we're aiming to achieve here is, if you have people who are going online looking for games, we'd say, look, here are the licensed providers. Here are the people who can advertise in New Zealand for these services. But here are the standards that they need to meet to ensure that people aren't going to be exploited by these companies.